Hello to everybody, welcome to this new video about the Sadrist trend, the Iraqi Sadrist trend, one of the most important Islamist Shia movement. Before starting, I want just to give you a few notes of acknowledgement, especially to Pietro Menghini. He is part of this research process that is just as the beginning. We are working together on a research on this movement. This video is also the second part of what I published previously on the politics in the Quran and in the Sunnah, which I will link at the end of this video. But let's go into our topics today and let's focus on this Sadrist movement, which I will take today from a theological point of view, where here theological must be understood as religious view, religious political view, because we are talking about people doing politics through Islam. What we should do very briefly to describe the process of the ulema, the jurist in a Shia contemporary world taking a political leading role. We should then see how the modern debate on power and authority develops between Iraq and Iran. We're interested into this geographical, cultural, ideological area, and then we talk a little bit more into the specific to an Iraqi trend from which will come out the very specific theology of the Sadrist movement. So let's see very shortly and briefly how developed the scholar activism. We must take into consideration when we talk about this topic about two essential things. An historical process, which is the contemporary process in which scholars as leading social and religious figures will be pushed on the forehead of action, of political action, especially in the context of colonization, and therefore on the struggle against colonization. On the other hand, we see also the development of a religious institution, which in Shia Islam it's called marja'iyya, which is the coming together of the highest marja, which are sources of emulation. They say the Shias, in other words, the highest charismatic and religious authoritative figure. So those phenomena come together. So on the one side, we have in the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, the development of something which looks like an institution called Marja'iyya. On the other side, we have the coming on the scene of leaders, religious figures, such as the most important we see in the context of the tobacco revolt in Iran in 1891 and in the Great Revolution, how they call it in Iraq, against the British in 1920. Those are the key moments in which comes on the scene the ulema as leading protest movement, as emitting fatwa to call, especially in Iraq, the tribes to uprise against the colonizer. You see that it's not a case that Islamist movement, be it Shia or Sunni, comes against the backdrop of colonialism, and on the other side, the building of the new nations, the new nation states. But in Iraq, there is a period after the failure of the Iraqi revolution when most ulema, they are sent into exile, especially in Iran, and then we have a pause in which we not hear about shuyukh, about ulema taking being the leaders of social movements until, however, the debate starts, because after this period of this first period of agitation, there is a period of elaboration in the 50s, especially between the 40s and the 50s. There is this effort of intellectuals to better understand the role of the ulema. In Iraq, we have Mohammed Sheikh, the Grand Ayatollah, Sheikh Mohammed Hussein Kashif al-Khitta, which dies in 1954, which for the first time starts a debate in which he proposed a theology of liberation, denouncing imperialism, in particular, the issue, the occupation of Palestine is at the fore of the discussion. The development of the discussion was around, as we mentioned, the jurist taking a major role of authority. Let's say just in few words that in Shia Islam, the jurists were considered to be those that followed in authority, religious authority, the imam. The imam disappeared somehow in the between the 9th and the 10th century, between the minor and the great occultation, until the 12th imam. We are in the context of 12 Shias, of course, will become considered as the Mahdi, the one that is there, we don't see it, is in occultation, and he will come back at the end of the time. So for that time being, the jurists become the representative, the deputies of the imam, but they come to take a narrow function of leading the community in religious terms, so explaining and helping the community to understand a religion. But this is called this is a limited wilaya, a wilayat khassa, as opposite to the wilayat amma, which include also the establishment of the imama, the just and the rightful Islamic State, which is reported to be happening at the end of the time. But in contemporary times, the issue of the wilayat al-amma, the general authority, to be taken from the to the authoritarian religious figures on earth, is open to debate. So how much the jurist should finally take position on the political issues, even more to be leading a process of establishing the rightful Islamic State before the end of time. This was the debate that started in the 50s, therefore, and which ended up to be establishing something that we can call two main trends in a schematic way. On the one side, on the one trend, we had the communist trend, which developed the famous wilayat al-faqih theory, in which he argues that the jurist should be taking a leading role in social movements, but even in bringing the community into the establishment of the Islamic State, in which the al-faqih, the jurist, would have sovereignty. So a theology of the Islamic State based on the governance, the direct governance of the fuqaha, of the jurist. On the other side, we had what we can call, even here schematically, a quietist trend, which is represented in Iraq very famously from the Ayatollah al-Khouei, very famous Ayatollah, who will die, who dominated the scene in Iraq in the 80s, in the 70s partially, until he dies in 92. Al-Khouei therefore developed also a kind of Iraqi strength within this debate, which is not necessarily quite a strength, but which takes from Al-Khouei the important theory of wilayat al-Ummah. Al-Khouei is famous for two concepts. On one side, the wilayat al-Ummah, on the other side, the wilayat al-Khassa. Wilayat al-Ummah, it means that the authority should be of the Ummah, of the Islamic society, as opposed to the communist wilayat al-Fuqaha, al-Faqih, the sovereignty of the jurist. But on the other side, he does not want to give the right to the Fuqaha to govern, but on certain specific subjects. He calls it the wilayat al-Khas. Wilayat al-Khas will apply in specific circumstances and in specific administrative roles, as it put in practice when it happened in 1991 in southern Iraq during the Sha'baniyya revolt, when he created a committee for management of the current administration in Najaf, where there was no more central and state power. After the whilst al-Khawi developed this concept, especially wilayat ummah, but he translated it into a quasi, quite is not completely, we have also from the same source a politicized version of this wilayat amma who will be represented by one of his followers, Mohammed Bakr al-Sadr, the very famous Mohammed Bakr al-Sadr, the founder, one of the founder of the Dawah party, the mother of all Shia Islamist party, but also an intellectual on his own, and also a shaheed, a martyr. He was assassinated by Saddam Hussein in 1980. He took on this concept of the wilayat al-ummah, but he politicized it, meaning that he thought that the Islamic State should be indeed applied, and then the jurists should take a role in it, but not as much as in communist idea. He saw, in fact, the jurist as having a role of a consultative role into the Islamic State. In this, it was closer to the Shirazi trend in Iran, as little bit different from the communist one, although both believed into an Islamic State based on a role of the jurist. Importantly, Mohammed Bakr al-Sadr also talked about giving more clear criteria for the formation of the marja. As I said, this developing role of the marja were coming together with the development, with the institutionalization of the institution of the marja. The sense that if the jurists as such have their own influence in a certain public of the Shia population, the marja as a whole should be like a church, the church of the Shia. But the problem with this institution, is so Mohammed Bakr, is that it was too much based on networks. For example, the Khoi family until today, it's very famous for its international networks, as it is also Al-Sistani, Ali Al-Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah of Najaf in Iraq today, which means that if you become marja because you are a highest appreciated and knowledgeable scholar, you are also because you have your own network, which is somehow linked to an official institution, to power in a traditional sense. So Mohammed Bakr Sadr wanted to try to find some objective criteria to overcome this problem. But we come finally to the Mohammed Sadr, the founder of the Sadrist movement, which was part of this politicized Iraqi trend, but which came into his own very original theology. This is the point of our discussion, in that he created a theology which was either the wilayat amma of Mohammed Bakr, not the wilayat al-faqih of Khomeini, not the quietist version of al-Khoi, but it was a theology based on two pillars. On the one side, what we can call a nationalist theology, on the other side, what we can call a revolutionary theology, the one based on a new concept of wilayat khassa, the other on a new concept of mahdism. Very interesting. Let's see to debate, because this is the key issues. First of all, let's say that Sadr, he believed to the guardianship of the jurists, like Khomeini, like Mohammed Bakr. He was a student of Mohammed Bakr, and actually he thought of himself as being the mujtahid, the Ayatollah of Iraq, the one entitled to have the guardianship of the community. But he came on this theory that the guardianship should not be amma in a geographical sense, but khassa. Very, very, very unusual concept of wilayat khassa. In this, khassa means specific, limited, in other words, meant for Mohammed a Sadr limited to the Iraqi nation. You see the development of a theology of the nationalism, if you want. He said that the Iranians chose their own way, we choose our own way within the same framework of wilayat amma, of the role of the guardianship of the jurists. So he also said that this is the second point. This leads us to the second pillar of the Sadrist theology. He said that not always the guardianship of the wilayated guardianship, the guardianship of the jurists may be applied due to historical specific context, like that of Iraq. That was not possible. There was not in the time an Islamic state. There was not the condition for directly taking the guardianship, the jurist himself to take the power and establish the Islamic State. In this case, Sadr argues the jurist should not be staying watching until the condition comes, or even the faithful, the Muslim, Shia, should not be waiting, for example, for the Mahdi to come, but he should act upon a social movement by spreading Islam in society, by preaching, by doing dawah, until a movement of consciousness, of awareness, of Islamization is created from below, and the Islamic State can appear to its condition as being led by the jurist of the time. More than that, and this is the Mahdi side of his theology, the return of the Mahdi is not happening until the Islamic government or the jurist will be accomplished. So you see, it's very active theology. You make a social movement, you preach in society in order to create the condition for the Islamic State be implemented, and this should be a preparatory, necessary step for the coming of the Mahdi. So people will be pushed to action in order to make shorter the becoming of the Mahdi, of the time in which justice will reign. So this was, in conclusion, the Sadrist theology of revolutionary nationalism. I think it is clear. Still today, the Sadrist movement plays this particular, very unique role, being a mass movement in Iraq. It's really the biggest player, social political player in Iraq, but it is playing within a nationalist frame. It's not like Hezbollah, for example, which believes and adhere to the wilayat al-faqih linked to Iran, to Tehran, obedient to a transnational idea of shiism. Is limited to an Iraqi shiism, an Iraqi nationalist political Islam, but at the same time is also a social movement of transformation based on a renewalist vision of the religion, in which the jurist on one side and the normal Shia Muslim should actively be on the field for creating the condition for emancipation and for justice. I hope you enjoyed this video. Put like if you did, and if you want to encourage even further, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you to the next video.